It's no secret that Sissela is my favorite character in the game. You can probably guess by the fact that she has by far the most guides on this account. I love playing Sissela. Her playstyle is just so fun to me. I feel like there's so many different ways you can play her, and it really leads to a lot of chances for innovation, and that's what I've got for you today. One of the weirdest builds you will ever see on Sissela that completely subverts her standard playstyle. Again, this is not meta whatsoever yet, but I have a feeling this is actually going to be quite powerful within the next couple of weeks. You're probably going to see this cropping up a lot more because I think that this build is genuinely fantastic. The only difference is that it's very different from the types of Sissela builds you've been seeing do very well on the ladder in the most recent patches. This build focuses on auto attacks. It's an auto attack Sissela build that also is heavily reliant on Sissela's E, Play With Us. Play With Us is a very strange skill that has a unique property that a lot of Sissela players probably don't even know about, which is that you can self-shield yourself by casting it in front of you while you're moving. You don't necessarily even have to throw out Wilson with your Q in order to get the shield on yourself, and they just buffed that in a recent patch, making it reduce its cooldown when you target a teammate, which includes yourself, by 2 seconds instead of 1.5 like it was before. In addition to the introduction of several new items since this type of build was ever even viable on Sissela, there is a brand new build that I just came up with, and I genuinely think it's fantastic. But before we get into that, let's learn a little bit more about how to self-shield yourself. Shielding yourself with Sissela is somewhat complicated. It's not the most intuitive mechanic of all time, and the way it works is actually a little bit easier once you don't think about it too hard. The way Sissela shields one of her teammates is originally intended to be throwing out Wilson and then Eing towards your target, grabbing them. Alternatively though, and this has never been considered a bug as they've never decided to fix it, you can E in front of yourself as you're walking and Wilson will drop behind you, then pull you instantly while shielding you. It doesn't really slow down your movement whatsoever, and it gives you the shield while you're moving. Now, there's an issue if you just E in front of you, it's going to make Sissela stop moving. So for example, if I move down and then press E, no other inputs, Sissela will stop moving until the entire animation plays. So our objective is to cancel that animation by inputting a move command in front of where we targeted our E. Now I know that sounds kind of complicated, but it's not as bad as you'd think. The most easy way to do it is to just hold right click in front of you and press E. What that'll do is it'll always be inputting commands as long as you're holding right click. Notice I'm not actually clicking again here, but by holding right click it is inputting movement commands. The only problem with this is that sometimes it will not always input the movement commands, but in general it is consistent enough that this is my preferred method. The alternative method is also fairly viable, which is just inputting a lot of movement commands really fast, hoping that your inputs are fast enough that you'll be able to move before you end up shielding. This one tends to be somewhat more consistent, but at the same time a little bit less consistent, because if you're not inputting at the right pace, you may not actually end up shielding yourself. But additionally, unlike the holding right click method, you'll rarely have the instances where you just stand still and it doesn't actually shield you. As a mechanic, it's a little bit bizarre, but again, it's pretty easy once you get used to it. You'll be able to shield very consistently while you're fighting. It's important that you know how to do this on a dime though. You shouldn't be wasting any time getting yourself shields, especially while in combat. Sometimes, keep in mind, you will end up accidentally pulling enemies who are standing on top of you, but in general, it's not even that bad of a result because a stun isn't too bad either. What's really important about this self-shield is that it also technically drops and picks up Wilson, so it will activate your passive as well, which is a big reason why it's so good. Now, let's go over the build. So here it is. Here is the build in question. Now you're probably going to notice right away how few items you need out of your second and third zones. It's one of the reasons why this build is so fast, so efficient, because you get most of your stuff in just your first zone, and it's not even that hard to get everything. The hardest thing to get is probably just the 2 glue, which honestly you could get by with just 1 pretty early on, because the second glue will be going to your cube watch, which comes later anyways because you need to find a meteorite. So realistically, if you're playing this build properly, you'll be going through your first 3.5 zones before you even have to contest that first tree, which you are going to be going for over here in Hotel. This is another one of these first tree contest builds where you want to be getting that early blazing dress. It's very nice if you can get it early, and it covers all of your SP issues for the rest of the game because you're going to be spamming your E pretty much all game. As for the items themselves, The weapon of choice is Fuma Shuriken and is the main reason why this works. It's the main reason why we're playing on Shuriken instead of throw. This weapon has 15% CDR, which is a massive amount of cooldown reduction. It also comes with 58 attack power and 40 extra normal attack damage. These stats are very, very high for an auto attack focused weapon, and that 15% CDR means we could spam shields on ourselves so much easier. We can get so much closer to that 40% CDR mark without having to sacrifice the rest of the quality of our items. Our chest piece of choice is going to be Blazing Dress. The stats on this thing are absolutely stacked. You have 20 attack power, 30 defense, 20 ENAD, and tons of regen. You will never have mana issues on this build as long as you have your Blazing Dress. This thing is insane, and we can get it in our 4th zone pretty consistently. Our tree fight is not too bad. Our helmet is going to be Motorcycle Helmet. It's a lot of max HP, and it's one of our main max HP sources along with Magazine. It's really easy to make, and it's just got good stats in general. We're also going to be running a Cube Watch and a Tachyon Brace. Now, Cube Watch and Tachyon Brace are the reasons why this build works now. This build kind of existed before. It used to use Crusaders and some other stuff, but it didn't get to cap CDR, and it was using sort of a worse version of Blazing Dress, which was Crusaders back then. It's a lot better now. Cube Watch has cooldown reduction on it, and Tachyon Brace is just an item that exists now. There was not CDR shoes before. You used to have to sacrifice max HP in order to get this CDR, but now it's on your shoe slot, which is very, very convenient. So with all of this together, you actually get pretty close to 33% CDR, which with Craft Mastery will even out to about 35 to 36% CDR. We're very close to the cap, which is at 40%, which means you can spam self-shields very frequently. Keep in mind also, with all this max HP plus all of the self-shielding they're going to be doing throughout the match, you have an insane amount of effective HP in addition to your passive, which is healing you for so much. This build is deceptively extremely tanky and still dishes out a ton of damage. Now, if you're uncomfortable with getting the Blazing Dress, if you don't like fighting over the tree, there is an alternative. You can go over here and pick up a Rocker's Jacket instead. This will actually give you healing reduction, which you do not have otherwise. Also, it fits within the route. You don't have to change anything. You'll be finishing it within your 3rd zone. So it's actually still pretty good along this route. And hey, it gives you that 30 attack power. So it's still good on the stats. It fits the build quite well. I just like the Blazing Dress better in general because it's more offensively statted. Additionally, that nice regen is keeping you from ever having to worry about SP drinks because you're going to be using your mana all the time, seeing as your only spell that you're spamming this entire game is one of your only spells that costs mana on Sissela. So yeah, that's going to be it for the actual itemization. One more quick thing about this build is that, remember, you do want to go for this Cube Watch, and it's actually very reliable to get a meteor. It spawns pretty early in the game. You'll be finishing your tree fight over here in Hotel relatively early on. After that, your next focus should be to go and get the first meteorite that spawns. It doesn't matter where it's going to be, just go there, get the meteor. I know it's probably not going to have a lot of items that you need to fully finish your build, but you should be pretty strong at that point. Getting that meteor ensures that you always get your Cube Watch, and that puts you at a very strong power point before day 2. As for transition pieces for this build, there are a ton of options. In fact, there's almost too many options to choose from. A couple of the things I have been toying with that I have liked quite a lot is swapping. If you get a radar and a force core, you can swap the Cube Watch for a radar and the magazine for an emerald tablet. Radar plus Emerald Tablet is a pretty good combination swap because you're keeping all that attack speed, you're keeping most of your defensive and offensive stats, you're actually gaining almost 40% crit chance from 2 of these items, but the only thing you're really trading off is that 300 HP that you're losing off of the magazine. Other than that though, for a late game offensive transition, this is a good place to go if you happen to get that force core and you happen to pick up a radar off of somebody. Another pretty decent late game swap in this build is trading your Moto helmet for either an Imperial Crown if you find one, which I feel is generally just a better version of Moto Helm at the moment. It's got 50 more HP, it's got 20 defense, which Moto Helm has no defense, and the skill amplification is not bad either. You're really only losing the 1 vision range and the 10 attack power, so this is pretty good in general. Additionally, if you do happen to get an additional Force Core, you can swap into an Elysian Halo, which is fantastic on this build. One thing I want to mention about attack power, the main skill in this build, of course, play with us, the E, that big self shield that you're going to be getting, that scales off of your attack power. It doesn't scale off of your amp whatsoever. So more attack power means bigger shields in general. Elysian Halo, it fits this build quite well. Now, one more potential swap that you could do, I haven't tested this one pretty much at all yet, but theoretically it should be pretty good, is you can swap out your Fuma Shuriken for a Sudersana if you do happen to get a Force Core. If you also happen to have a Tac Ops helmet, that will mostly cover the CDR you're losing from the Fuma, but it gives you a lot more attack power. This is really going to up your attack power, meaning that your shields are going to be bigger in general. The only thing that you're really losing, again, is about 3% CDR, and you're losing the ENAD off of the Fuma Shuriken, which could matter in a lot of matchups where the opponent is stacking too much defense. It's still something worth testing, but I haven't really extensively tested this one yet. It is just an option, but this goes to show just how flexible this build is. There are many ways you could take this, but the core is still there. You want a high amount of CDR and a high amount of attack power and or ENAD to make sure that your auto attacks are still doing damage. As for the skilling order, it should be a little bit different from what you're used to seeing. You are going to be maxing your passive first, as your passive is extremely important in pretty much every Sissela build, but instead of maxing your Q, you're going to be maxing your E instead. It should be pretty obvious at this point that self-shielding is the most important part of this build, so Emax is going to be after passive. But now between Q and W, I'm actually a huge fan of maxing W over Q in this build, because with high amounts of CDR and maxing your W, the cooldown on your W gets really, really low, and it's an excellent defensive tool, especially since this build has so much effective HP just by stalling out fights, getting more shields, getting more healing off of your passive. I love having my W with a very short cooldown. Additionally, leveling up your Q has a noticeable downside that a lot of Sissela players aren't aware of. Leveling your Q increases the HP cost of using it by almost double. It goes from about 50 HP per cast up to around 90 HP per cast, meaning you're going to be chunking yourself for almost 100 true damage every time you cast it if you max out your Q. Now, that's not bad for amp builds because that is the vast majority of your damage, but since we're more auto attack focused, since we're using our E to trigger our passive more than we're using our Q in general, I like leaving this to last just as an occasional extra amount of damage, an occasional extra tool to help you pull someone who tries to run away. I like the W and the E far more than the Q in this build, so I'd highly recommend trying out this skilling order first and seeing how you like it. If you don't like it, you want to max Q over W, be my guest. This is just my personal favorite way of doing it. Now, even though we are not amp focused, I still take a point in free at last whenever available. Sissela's ultimate is still really good even if you're not amp focused. It lets you do a lot of damage when targets just barely get away, and it's been more useful than it has not been useful, and I like having that extra point in there every time I can. So be sure to put points in your ultimate when you can as well. Okay, I know it's kind of a weird in-depth guide for a build that no one has ever really seen before. I normally don't go this deep into builds, but since there's a lot going on here that is not intuitive, I was very happy to give you the chance to see my line of thought, see why this build ticks, see how it works, because if you don't know exactly what the game plan is here, it's just gonna fall on its head. So give it a shot with the info that you now have, see if you like it. Again, if you don't like the blazing dress, if it's too contested, especially now that the video's out, go for a rocker's jacket instead, things like that. Give it a shot, innovate, try it out. I think you'll have a good time, especially if you like weird Sissela builds. So with all of that being said, let's check out an example game. Okay, so one thing to remember for this build is that you don't actually need that much stuff in your first 3 zones. Most of these zones only need about, well, the first zone is like 6 or 7 items, but aside from that, like second zone is only 2, third zone is only 2. It's pretty low count, so these first 3 zones should go really fast. You should be in your 4th zone by the time tree spawns and actually have a little bit of extra time to work through those zones. Right now I just need a bike helmet, and I'm actually done here. I can go to forest where I just need 2 more things. I'm gonna have my weapon online plus my moto helmet. It's a pretty good pace, just in general, but I'm kind of struggling to find my bike helmet right now.
생존자가 사망했습니다.
Damn, these people who spawn school like clean this place out. Holy, there's nothing left. That's fine. We don't need to make a motorhome. We'll survive.
생존자가 사망했습니다.
이제 좀 쓸 수 있을 것 같아요. 이제 제가 보통해줄 차례예요.
생존자가 사망했습니다.
Damn, we were actually kind of low rolling in general. We didn't get our tights, we didn't get our moto helm. Not the best game, but that should be okay. This build's still pretty strong. Should have a decent shot of winning the tree fight. Make a little bit of food. Make things a little easier for us.
동물들도 있을까 했어. 나름대로 최선을 다했어요. 지켜주세요. 구해주실 수 있나요? 모두 고통에서 벗어나려고.
생존자가 사망했습니다.
Fuma confirmed for stronger than Wind and Fire Wheels, I guess. Like, legit, those big auto attacks, they kind of matter a lot, like, for sure. You're seeing it right there. It's just good. Also, honestly, hey, kind of a weird adaptation. So we're currently in a situation where we don't have Moto Helm, right? But we did just kill a body. We did just kill a person who gave us a gold and ruby. Which does mean that we could go to a crown pretty easily. Which is one of our pivot items anyways. So we're gonna just sort of adapt to it. Normally you would get your moto helm over here in school. Finish the full moto helm over here in hotel. But since things just kind of got weird this game, we're just gonna adapt, you know? It's gonna work out.
이제 좀 쓸 수 있을 것 같아요. 마음에 들어요.
Normally we should be pretty close to finishing our shoes too. Also, remember, the meteor spawns in 7 seconds and we should be there first. So we're gonna go to pond. First meteor, very important that you contest it. I know we're missing a lot of items. Normally we'd like to be a lot stronger at this point. But things sort of went weird. Alright, we didn't get our tights. So, yeah. Thankfully it looks like no one's actually gonna contest it. In general, just fighting with this would not normally win this fight, but no one contested, so we should be okay. Yeah, getting that first meteor is really important, because the second meteor doesn't come down for a while. And we want to be on that Q bunch nice and early, so pretty important that you go for that. There's our shoes.
새 금지 구역이 지정되었습니다.
Okay. Looking pretty good so far. I'm going to try and find a battery while we're here, because this part of Avenue tends to be unlooted. That being said, we're going to be heading towards dock anyways. We get a battery there anyways, so it should be no big deal. Alright, let's just go.
생존자가 사망했습니다. 이제 생존자가
Okay, found it.
생존자가 사망했습니다.
Not worth chasing. We don't have shoes.
생존자가 사망했습니다.
So just for convenience's sake, I'm going to target the crown, just so I remember. We need scissors. We need a hat. It's a weird way of getting there, but we're starting to actually get there. But I mean, honestly, that's not that super weird. Like, shit happens. It'll happen pretty much every time you play the game. Something's gonna get messed up. Maybe a zone closes you needed the items from. Maybe you just low roll. You didn't get what you needed. You have to adapt. So, here's a good example of that. We could also just get a bike helmet here potentially, but we're kind of down to just pivot into the crown anyways, because it's basically just a straight upgrade. We'll make the moto helm for now, but we do have the materials to go to crown if we need to. Ooh, there's a Fiora down there. Kind of full build, but I'm confident. Let's do it.
누군가가 루미아 섬을 지배하고 있습니다. 생존자가 사망했습니다.
아니었어. 여기서 나가게 된다면 병원이 아닌 다른 곳으로 가.
Okay, so we can actually start prepping our pivot pieces. We do want to contest Wick. We can start prepping the pivot pieces. I like making a emerald tablet in case I find a radar to replace the cube watch. Like, ideally, I do like to pivot cube watch into radar and then the accessory slot into a an emerald tablet. So I'm gonna head over here early, try and find some playing cards. There they are. Nice. We can go to pawn now because we still have a little bit of time before Wick spawns to try and get the flower. That being said though, I don't really plan on making a radar. I just plan on just taking it off of a body if we do find one. No guarantee that they actually, you know, anyone in the lobby actually made one though. It's important to lead with your shields because you don't want to like eat a big chunk of damage that you weren't expecting.
사람들이 많기를 알고 있는데 당연히 없겠죠?
Okay, there looks like there's a lot of people out here trying to maybe contest tree. We have that Nadine over in pond. We have the Shoichi above us who's trying to get out of here. And there's this Luke here as well. Luke can be kind of a tough matchup. We're going to try and force it before he gets the jump on us. Like, see, we're already doing pretty good, but the Shoichi's back, so we can't necessarily force this. Oh, the Shoichi's going for the Luke. Okay.
많이 아플 것 같아요.
No one really wants to fight us, I guess. Oh. No, the Luke's just fighting the boar, I think.
조용하네요. 물품이 필요해요.
새 금지 구역이 지정되었습니다. 생존자가 사망했습니다. 누군가가 연쇄 처치 중입니다. 이제 생존자가
We can also potentially hold on to a tac ops helmet.
북적이는 건
Not a terrible option either. Problem is, if we take it right now, if we wear it right now, we are overcapping ourselves on CDR, which is not necessary. Also, it's okay that we didn't get the kill there, as long as he's dead. Why am I hearing Wick,
조용하네요.
but not seeing Wick? What the? Wait, is she like over here or something? What? You're seeing this?
많이 아플 것 같아요.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, we both just missed everything. Okay, Wick was apparently over there, just making weird noises on the wrong side. That's fine. We're just gonna chase Wick. Getting Wick buff is huge. If you do manage to get Wick buff, that is a massive buff to your DPS. So it's very important that we do get this. Also, the materials are going to help us out too, because we can get the Emerald tablet, which is really nice. But mainly, we're in it for the Wick buff. I think she went... she went this way. Alright. That's fine. And wander into our enemies. The one downside of this build that I've sort of found so far is that you're not the fastest character in the world. You can't chase extremely well. You're basically just a fighting machine. If anyone ends up committing to you, you're pretty much going to win that fight. And you're pretty durable too, because you do get to spam that shield so often. That being said though, you can't chase extremely well. You're sort of relying on your QE. And if you throw your Q out, then you're kind of in trouble because, well, that's how you self-shield. You have to have the E on you. You have to have Wilson on you for that to be very effective. Fuck. It is tricky getting used to, like, selfieing. Like, selfieing is not very intuitive, and it doesn't work, like, half the time. So you do have to get used to it. So, I don't know, you can kind of see in that fight right there, like, we did a lot of self-Es. I think there's at least 3 self-Es in that fight. Self-E meaning like self-shielding. So what that did for us is that it essentially extended our HP by, I don't know, roughly 1,000-ish HP. Which is it makes you very deceptively tanky. You don't look like you have, you know, 3,200 HP, but you actually do, you know, because you're going to have enemies burning through that HP. You're constantly going to be pseudo-healing yourself for so much, so fast, so consistently, in addition to the fact that you are Sissela, so you do have that passive going as well. This is all very, very important, and it's the reason why it works so well. Yeah, pretty much, it's just one of those things where it's like, you just, no one really knows how to evaluate this fight, because no one is really used to fighting you like this. Like, there are no characters who really, like, spam shields on themselves quite to this extent. Whoa, everybody's down there. Okay, we're just gonna force our fight, because we have Wick buff, they don't, they're all together, we could get teamed up on, yeah, true, but feel pretty confident. We have a lot of self-healing, self-shielding. We should be pretty okay. And with the Wick buff, we honestly can just kill all of them. And I'll open with our ult. Kill one right away. Go in for the cleanup. Now we just need to kill this Jackie, and we're all good. Where's she hiding? Yeah, who's playing hide and seek now, Jackie? Oh, actually, hey, whoa. Whoa. We are pretty close to finishing a radar off that body. I don't even think we need to, though. I think we can just win with what we've got. But yeah, that would be an option if we felt like going for it. Nadine might have had something. I think she was on Shah Jahan. Oh, hello. Just gonna run. Alright. I am going to switch a crown here. Given the choice, I would much rather have crown. That being said, keep in mind, your E does not scale on amp as far as I'm aware. Instead, it only scales on your attack power, right? Because you're not dealing damage, so it doesn't amplify at all. But it does have an attack power scaling, so for every one for every one attack power, you actually are increasing your shield by 0.5. Is a pretty decent ratio. So we're currently at 143 attack power, so it's additionally shielding us for an extra 71 per shield. So getting higher attack power is actually really important. So there is definitely potential for like swapping to, say, Tac Ops helmet and switching over to a Suitor Sauna. That would give us a much fatter shield in general. It's an option I've been toying with. I think you could try it out if you want. It could end up being better, but for now, we're just gonna go with this. Gonna just shield away all that damage. She's gonna try and heal. I have a feeling she's just gonna keep running forever and never actually commit to this fight. Just trying to stealth. Yeah, she's just gonna keep running. We're on no shortage of food here, so this is fine. She can try and run for as long as she wants, but she's never gonna fully time out our wick. She's gonna have to fight us at some point eventually. Especially if she corners herself like this. Oh, not the boar. Oh, that's the issue. Like, that's what I was talking about. Like, sometimes you'll just E in front of you while holding right click. It just won't move you forward. It will just not self-shield you. It really sucks. There's nothing you can do about it. Don't forget to eat food, by the way. Very important. And make sure she can't rest. We have way more timers, so this is okay for us to chase her. Unless she TP's in. Interesting. She might just run away, she might just boom. You may not actually get to fight. Yeah, she can't do anything. Bye, Jackie. We probably don't even get the kill here, actually. Pretty sure it's just gonna die to zone, but that's okay. We can count it as 6. So, anyways, there you go. That's how you win on this build. This build is legitimately nuts. I think it's probably going to be meta-defining at some point. At the very least, I want it to be because I think it's really cool. It's a very unique way of playing Sissela. We saw something similar to this a long time ago, but it was never really to this extent because we have items like Cubotch in its current form with the CDR, Blazing Dress being so much better than it used to be, Fuma Shuriken being so much more powerful than it used to be, and now Tachyon Brace just existing. So, like, all in all, this build couldn't have existed before, but it's back more than ever with all of these changes. So check it out, I think you'd have fun. I really love this build, and I'll see you guys some other time.